Actually Controller, the podcast that is actually Controller. And we are actually in control of everything you're hearing right now. I'm so very sorry. What up, everyone? Welcome back to Actually Controller. You got Steve.
This is Chad.
And it's Bob.
Wow, we got a different mix going on tonight for you. Yeah. So, as promised, we are going to discuss our brand new release that's coming out this upcoming Friday. It is titled Decennium of Visions. For anyone who's curious,
What does Decennium mean?
Decade means 10 years. Decennium is close to that in definition. It means over the period of 10 years.
Oh.
So, with the fact that this isn't just a decade that it took to get here, it took over a period of 10 plus years to get here. Decennium made more sense than Decade of Visions due to the fact that, this has been a long road.
It's been a long time
It
coming.
really has. It has. I'm happy to see
lounge.
it. I'm happy to see it finally come
Welcome
to a conclusion
Control.
on the aspect of what Visions was.
Yeah. So, if you've watched any of the Track Story episodes, I've given a little bit of a synapse to part 1 and part 2, but we've never had the origin story of part 1 from the horse's mouth really get spoken. So, Chad,
Yeah.
you're up, buddy.
I know. The way Visions came out, as far as Controller goes, was just we needed some filler tracks on our album. And I was like, hey, I've got a riff that I've had since, I don't know, I was like 15, 16-ish.
Yep.
I wrote it at a very young age. And
I think I remember saying something along those lines.
and I've tried introducing it to other bands before to try to get it put into songs. And I think at one point it never got fully recorded or released, but it did get written into like the tail end. It was like the outro of a song. And
Do
I
you remember what band by any chance that would have been with?
That would have been Lucidus.
Okay.
But it just, because it didn't get the life that I had envisioned for it, I was like, and we needed something. I was like, well, let's just use this. And I was actually called out on it from an old friend of mine, my drummer that I had when I was in Lucidus, Randy. He actually, when he heard Thoughts, Ideas, and Visions, he's like, oh,
I remember that riff.
You using that riff? I'm like, leave me alone.
Well, you know what? And I think that Randy can take this one in stride at this point in time after all of these years and be understanding that it looks like there was probably going to never be another time that Chad was going to get the opportunity to have this actually be recorded, tracked, and released to the world. Yeah. Unless you're planning on dropping this and starting a whole fresh band here next week.
Yeah. Next week I'm taking this track and I'm moving it on.
Yep, exactly.
But it was good to put some feet underneath it and for it to actually go somewhere. And for some reason, like out of just like nowhere really, I knew that I wanted this to be more than just the one go around on the concept of what this song is supposed to be. Yeah,
I don't, and maybe Bob has some recollection of this. I don't personally of the reasoning or the spurn of why we looked at this and went, okay, this is going to continue on as we were just in the studio. Because
I think it's a lot to do with, since it was just filler instrumental music.
We basically, I know we ended up coming at it with the concept of, since it was filler music, that we were all going to basically kind of put our 2 cents and like put spoken word to it and like our thoughts, our visions to it. And that's ironically kind of how it was named, and then we continued to let that be the trend, and then it actually kind of blew up and became something more over time, like as it evolved.
Well, and I agree that it blew up to something more as time went on. I do remember there was something that just spurned the conversation of so when we make part 2 for the next album, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it was about the entirety of it, because it wasn't, I don't remember that one, if you will, moment that it was from a spoken word or during the tracking or somebody did something instrumentally that was just so inspiring. It was like, we need to try to capture that again type thing. I don't know why.
Well, I think had a part 2 when I really tried to convince you guys that I wanted to play the ukulele or the hurdy-gurdy, and you guys just said no. We're just going to do Visions.
I do vividly remember you being fairly adamant actually about the hurdy-gurdy.
I'm serious. I want to do a song with the hurdy-gurdy.
I think a lot of it was just could have spawned on my end with it being a passion project of already so many years in the making.
It took so long for this to happen. I need this to happen again.
I need more. No, I don't know why, like, the idea of, we're going to write a part 2.
Yeah, I knew as soon as we had part 2, it was a no-brainer. We're like, we're going to make part 3 at some point. But why the part 2 happened.
Because of how...
Are we going to have part 4, 5,
no.
6,
no.
7? No, we're done. This is the last part.
Yeah,
You guys only get 3 parts.
Yes.
I mean, the lyrics
It's
pretty
the
much,
trifecta.
in part 3, the lyrics pretty much gave it a beautiful conclusion.
There is a finality to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Bob's sitting here going, I have no idea what I sang.
No, I remember what I said.
I think, like, because of how Thoughts, Ideas, and Visions, which is how we named the single track, we broke it up into 3 and named each track a different thing. And when it came to Visions being the bookend end of the album, and it was like when we were getting into the writing mode for Ascending Degrees, it was like, okay, we ended with Visions. I want to start with Visions.
I will say, conceptually, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
In practice, that bombed.
Yeah, I know.
The first version of Ascending Degrees. It train wrecked it like nobody's business, to where had we wrote an album that was much more thematically in line, I think, with the way part 2 was, I think it would have worked out well. But we went like, here's part 2, here's the rest of the damn album.
It's like jumping out there with this whole storyboard idea, but then not backing up your storyboard on the entirety of the second album.
Well, yeah, because we never went into the second album going, this is going to be a concept album.
Right.
But isn't this where, when we were coming up with this idea, didn't we also say something along the lines of, we had a vision of a chainmail bikini, and that's where it came from?
Well, that was for Matt.
That was for Matt.
That was for Matt. Yeah.
But
that
was where the vision came from, right?
There's a lot of visions at that point in time.
It was.
There's tons of visions. But, yeah, I mean, it was just one of those. For me, I was hopeful that now having us talking about this EP and talking with you here, that maybe you were going to help spurn the, like, well, this is why the part 2 was considered.
Like, where did the first one come from? How did part 2 become a thing? Part 1 was a very young riff that I played a lot, and having Randy as my drummer for so many years, me and him rehearsing, it got played a lot between the two of us. And that's how he was able to identify it so easily. But then afterwards, and we're in the writing process of Ascending Degrees, and it comes around that I come out with the riff for part 2, and it was based off of a modified version of part 1's bass riff.
Maybe that was where it was at, because I don't feel like when we were doing anything for Undefined that there was ever a talk of part 2.
No. No,
and I don't even feel like it was happening during Redefined.
There wasn't
as soon as part 2 was written, there was already talk of part 3.
Yeah, no, I do vividly remember once we had part 2 figured out, we're like, okay, there's going to be a part 3. How it's going to come, when it's going to come, no idea on that, but there will be a part 3. But yeah, it was the part 2 thing where I'm like, unless there was just so much going on that I don't remember, it was just, there was no one moment that was sticking in my memory of a part 2's happening type thing.
No, it was just I was playing around with a modified version of part 1, and it kind of latched on, and everybody jumped onto it,
and we started writing. And I think you're right. I think that probably was the origin story for part 2, and it was just okay, that reminds me a lot of part 1. So are we going to make this a trilogy type thing?
Yeah, we got a saga going now.
Yeah, and the only thing that I do vividly remember when we were working on part 2 was we ended out part 1 like this. Mm-hmm. We have to start part 2 to where it makes sense with that same intro as that outro. And then whatever part 3 ends up being and however we end part 2, once we write it, needs to tie together as well somehow.
Well, I think for me, maybe this comes across egotistical. This is probably like some of the deepest lyrics I've written between these 3. Like you really just kind of put your own personal stamp on it.
Well, part 1 I think was kind of a forced. Part 1 was a force. It was all of us being as introspective as we could possibly muster.
And then considering, you want it to. If you have part 1 like that, you want part 2 to reflect that. And then part 3 obviously is going to encompass it, but it literally is like the vision that we all kind of agree on. Like it is, like this is life, this is the world, this is how we see things. This is whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, whether you agree with it or not. Like this, life happens. Sometimes it slaps you in the face. Sometimes it's, it goes smooth sailing. Other times you need to wake up and see what's in front of you, and that's kind of how all 3 of these tie together.
Fair.
It's.
I will say, from a lyric standpoint, I think you're correct. From a music standpoint, this was a goddamn kicking and screaming fest.
Well, thank you for going through it, guys.
So part 1, and I think that's why it's so frustrating that it was such a kicking and screaming. Part 1 was quite literally we're in the studio, what do we have? Okay, that's about the BPM you want to play it at? Cool. Here's a click. Play it for a good 2 minutes, and then we'll just recycle and we'll copy paste wherever we need to, and we're going to just freeform over the top of it. What's your key? And me, Jeff, and Brandon quite literally did one take for the whole thing on the spot, in key, whatever came out, and that was that. And then part 2... I was very hands-off on, actually. That was you and Brandon in the lab for days upon days upon days. Just, maybe this. No, maybe that. Maybe this. The 2 most indecisive guys of the band were the ones that were steering the ship on that one. That was why that one took a while to get...
Indecisive? How dare... Oh, wait until we get to Visions 3.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, the main verse riff was a done deal.
Yes.
It was how we were going to approach the chorus. And for the bass line, the chorus...
And structure.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, that structure...
Structure on part 2 was also a beast.
Listening to it again, because, I realized... Because
we played one chorus.
I had put it on the back burner for so long, and I haven't listened to it for so long until we've gotten our studio samples.
Right.
And listening to it again, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
we didn't cycle through parts at all.
No. There's a revision, or there's a revisioning and revisit of the first intro riff again after the one time we play a chorus. But then it completely disintegrates into a whole other thing by the time we get to the outro and everything.
Hey, but yet it's still like a 5.5 minute long song. Hold on.
Just to say something, we never revisited a part in Visions 2. Okay? Never. And you guys actually ask me why I have trouble remembering some parts.
But we don't play those songs that are that challenging live. We don't play the extra challenging songs live usually. For two reasons. One, Bob's not going to remember what we're doing. Two,
I'm not going to remember what I did.
Okay, three reasons. And third, none of y'all are going to care live if you can't remember because we didn't do the part a second time. So,
I mean, they might. They might.
Now,
but I will say, re-listening to part 2 has like spurred the love of it again, and I have been enjoying spending that time in that world, in that just space of mind of where Visions 2 was,
where you were at with it at that time.
And it's just the beauty of it all captured me back then when I was writing it. And
back in 2014,
oh god,
is when you were writing it. And 2014 is when part 2 was getting written.
Yeah. God. It took 10 years to get part 3 done.
Yeah.
We'll blame Jeff. Jeff. It's Jeff's fault, Chad, not yours. It's Jeff's fault.
I wish I could pass the blame on this, but Visions was my baby from beginning to end.
I will give you one bit of a
except for the remix.
Out. Well, yeah. I will give you one bit of an out. We did have a period between 2017 and 2020-ish where could you have worked on it? Yes.
Yeah.
Would it have been an easy thing to work on? Because we did actually try to work on a part 3.
Yeah, there were times where like, hey, let's try dabbling with a part 3 idea. And
I know I have all the recordings to prove it.
Oh, God. I don't remember those ones.
Yeah, they're mostly in the back room.
But then again, like this iteration of part 3, I think I've brought like 5 different bass tracks just in the basic writing of part 3 that all got scrapped. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
Not sure.
It was like so much hit the writing room floor with Visions, though.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. There was something about it that I was like, I loved all these parts, but they weren't good enough.
Well, with part 3, what I was referring to with all the recordings, there was one specific writing session. We were in the back room, and it was fully acoustic. You had just gotten your bass. I had the acoustic guitar, and I got the piano back there, and it was you, me, and Jeff.
Oh, God.
And
Did we record that?
Yeah, we recorded all of that. That was about 4 hours of riffing that we were going...
Yiffing?
Riffing.
Okay.
That we were going back and forth on, just trying different ideas, and we had landed on something where we're like... In the recording, we're like, this is going to be it. This is the thing we're doing. And not one single thing from that we're doing this.
None of that made it.
Yeah. Is in the actual part 3 that has now gotten recorded and will be released to all of you as of Friday.
I think the day that I came in here
and
with like the riff that did turn out to be Visions 3 and like the look that I got from everybody... One, they liked the riff that I started playing on. Mm-hmm. 2, they're like, well, what are you doing with all the others?
Yeah.
Like, they're all gone. And just the sheer hatred.
Well, and then the third part of the look was do I even need to put effort into this one? Because I swear to God, if I keep putting more effort into this, I'm going to murder you.
I think one thing that really helped is the riff for what is Visions 3. When I
was going to say, we can finally say that.
Yeah.
All of the riffs are now what are for Visions 3. Yeah. There is no more conversation of, well, this riff might be for part 3.
I think when I started playing the main riff for what is Visions 3, and Chris came in on the drums, really sold that part to me. It's like once I had the drums behind it, it felt alive.
I will say this, though. So to give a little more backstory on part 3, he's talking about the main verse riff. Yes. And I love this guy right here, but he always starts with the verse riff, and it is infuriating because it's like, where's the hook? I don't know. Where are we going to make the hook? I don't know.
I write what I feel, man.
I know.
Yeah, and the verse has the substance.
But we finally get to the point where it's just me and him. We're working over the verse and everything, and it's like, all right, where is this going to go? And we come up with what we thought might be the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting on it for, I don't know, probably about 2 weeks or so. And I vividly remember coming back to you, and I'm like, that riff works. It needs to stay in the song, but it can't be the chorus. It is too lackluster to be the sole thing. It needs something else integrated into it. Not necessarily where we need to write more notes into that riff, but that riff can't be just it.
Which ends up spurning the idea of, to kind of tie in parts 1 and parts 2.
Yep.
For the chorus in part 3, I actually did another revision riff of the original Visions.
Yep, and then
riff.
I was like, okay, if that's going to be the riff, let me try to figure out how to make this all work together.
Yeah, let's figure out how to tie it together.
So this is a verse. This was what we had as the chorus. I think that riff, the verse riff, still works well into what we had as the chorus riff, but it doesn't really work as just being the ultimate lift. So maybe let's keep the same riff, split in half, make it a pre-chorus and a post-chorus, and this brand new chorus we just wrote, we shove right in the middle of it. Now we need to figure out notationally, does where the old chorus riff meet where the new chorus is at, and then where the new chorus ends doesn't meet to where it's now going into for the post-chorus. That was a lot of screwed up math that it took in order to finally get all the pieces to
and
connect
I'm so
to one another.
glad I didn't have to figure it out.
Yeah, that was oh god, I was so frustrated by the time we got to that, and
our
then
time signature on it too, and
but all of this to say, we get all of that figured out. All of that figured out. And Chad sitting here saying that he was sold on what he had brought and that it was definitely going to be part 3. However, he's not alluding to the fact that he was not, in fact, sold on all of this. We had gotten all of this down that line. And then he comes up with this 4/4 riff that's about 20 BPM slower. And he's like, I don't know. Maybe this is the riff. All of us look at him and go, no, it's not.
I don't remember this.
And Chris ultimately looks and goes, all right, you're sold on that riff? Let's just make it the outro. Let's find a way to actually tie it together and make it the outro. How can we slow the BPM and change time signature without it being a train wreck? Which, hopefully, when you listen to it on Friday, you agree that we did it correctly and we pulled it off.
No, it's a train wreck.
I personally think we did. Maybe Bob's correct.
It's
I don't know. You're going to let us know type thing.
I quite enjoyed it.
I personally enjoy it as well.
So it was an enjoyable train wreck?
It was an enjoyable train wreck.
Nice. Nice.
This is what Visions is. It's an enjoyable train wreck.
I mean, kind of. But yeah, part 3 almost went from, it's technically a 3/4 song, to scrapping all of that and becoming a 4/4 song. Had we not just I don't care what you. It's not. No, I'm not saying that that's not a good riff, but that's not going to become the riff.
That riff is Visions 4. Just put it into Visions 3.
Nice. So Visions 4 is coming.
No,
it's already done. It's a 2-minute song at the end of part 3.
Yeah. It's just that little snippet at the end of 3.
Well, you call it a little snippet. It's like 2 minutes long. Because remember, part 3 is just...
minute and a half.
Yeah, part 3 is like 6.
Almost 6 minutes long. So
5 minutes 47.
Then again, like every track on the Visions, as far as like
part 1 ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was going to
That's
be.
what she said.
Four and a half minutes, I think.
Yeah, so as weird as this is to say, you're getting a 4-track EP. This EP is going to be longer than the 6-track EP we just released at the beginning of the year.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
You're getting more amount
You're getting
of
more
music.
of Controller with less tracks.
Yeah, kind of.
That's right.
Although,
So you
like-
only have to let the track flip so many times.
With like the painstaking stuff and how long it's taken for the Visions music to be done, the artwork has also been sat on since like Visions 2, and the idea of coming out with the Visions EP.
Because the artwork Jeff sent to me when I was working on the first cut of Ascending Degrees.
Yes.
Because
that artwork
is actually in it.
Hidden inside the artwork of the original Ascending Degrees art.
So if you happen to have a blue copy of Ascending Degrees, congratulations, you're one of the fortunate few. There's there's only 100 copies of it out there. So good on you. And if you do have a copy, let us know if you know where that artwork's hidden in the bulk of the artwork. Yeah, I swear to God, if you didn't know, you would so disappoint me.
I know.
I'm almost tempted to ask you where. And put you on the spot.
I'd need a copy of it. I can point to it.
Right, but yeah, the artwork, like you said, that artwork has been sitting there for over 10 years, ready to go. Already, well, let me rephrase that. 75% of the artwork was sitting there ready to go conceptually for about 10 years. If you get the CD version, which there's only going to be 15 copies of, by the way, people. If you happen to get a CD copy, the artwork that's on the CD was not of the original concept. I got that figured out a couple of years after Jeff had sent it, but that still means I've been sitting on that artwork for the CD for like 8 years.
Oh yeah, but that artwork has been earmarked.
For the front and the back cover.
I thought you said 10, though.
For the front and the back cover.
This is messed up. You're not supposed to lie to the people watching.
It's just the idea that artwork has been earmarked for this project.
Jeff's not here, so I have to be the troublemaker.
Oh, you got to be the troublemaker.
I have to.
But yeah, I mean, the bulk of this, other than the actual construction of Part 3, has been in some iteration of concept since 2014.
Yeah.
The artwork, the track listing, the concept of the theme to the lyrics, the bulk of this project, as long as it's taken to get to the finish line, has been mentally done for a long time.
Yeah. Mentally spent. That's what you meant. Mentally spent.
Well, I mean, the weirdest thing is for this project is every other release we've gone into, this is the exception, every other release we've gone into, we have not carried over material that we just didn't put onto that release. Like when we were writing Undefined, other than the stuff that we put on to Redefined, that's been the only time we've ever carried material over.
We actually have a lot of material that we just...
Right out of the gate, but I mean, like, Ascending Degrees material all went on to Ascending Degrees.
Well, because
the expansion material...
Yeah, it was 19 tracks.
Well, no, I'm talking the first version. We didn't have the expanded tracks written when we went into do the first one. Yeah. So that's what I'm getting at. Is like, other than at the very beginning, we've never carried material over going, oh, we'll just put that one onto the next release type thing. So this is the only true we've carried stuff on with the anticipation of what it's going to eventually be when it's eventually going to come out. Everything else, when we do it, it's we're capturing this moment in time. This is where we were at mentally. This is where we were at, skill set wise. This is where we were at, passion wise, at this exact time in our lives. And so we make material, we make a recording of it, and we put it out. We're not like, oh, well, I was feeling this way back 12 years ago. let me wait till it's 14 years down the line, and I'm going to try to recapture that emotion from then. If that's where we're at, then that's what we're putting out now. This one is a whole other sidebar from all the rest of that. This is its own unique entity. I will say this, I'm glad we did it.
Yes.
I never want to take on this level of a time-lengthy project ever again in the scope of this band.
No.
There's not anything on Ascending Degrees or Watch It Burn or EOH where I look at it and go, I want to create the part 2 10 years from now. But 10 years from now.
No.
You know what? You don't know that. 10 years from now, you could be like, you know what? I really, absolutely want to do a part 2 for Undefeated.
Oh, God, no. That'd be 10 years from now for Undefeated. That would make that an almost 30-year album.
Okay.
No, I don't want to do a part 2 of that. There is so many attributes of that I could never mentally recapture. I could never
part 2 would just be better. That's all it is.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, well, that's all it would.
So what are you going to be getting with this Visions EP? One thing is the thoughts, ideas, and visions off of our Undefined album are all smashed together back into a single track rather than 3.
As they were originally recorded. That's the other thing, is, if you don't know, that was never we recorded it separately. It was a recorded all as one. Then we
and then they
cut it apart.
Ginsu chefed it and just...
Well, and not only that, though, there was chunks we actually fully pulled out. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like, okay, that's unnecessary runtime on that, so let's just cut that. This is the first time that everything that we recorded at that session is actually available. And I will say, for me personally, it's kind of cool to hear that as a singular piece for the first time ever. Because, like, I've heard a raw cut version of it from Putt when he sent it to me like 6 years ago or something like that. But I'm like, that's a raw, not mixed, not polished, not pocketed, anything version of it. And I was like, I was able to understand it vaguely, but I wasn't able to actually experience it like it is now, that it's fully pocketed, mixed, mastered, all the bells and whistles are put onto it and everything. That it makes it feel much more like an experience. Listening to part 1, I will say, in the best way possible, I go into a cathartic, checked out state listening to part 1. Not because it's boring, but because it is so therapeutic, if you will, in its tonality.
It's a bit nostalgic.
I mean, there is that too.
And then you're getting a remastered version of Part 2. That I know our producer, Austin Putt, has painstakingly went through it.
Oh my God, I don't even know how much money I need to spend on dinners at this point in time going forward, taking him out apologizing for what he's had to do in order to get Part 2 to the version you're about to listen to on Friday.
So it's a cleaned up, remastered version.
Fully edited.
Fully re-edited. Like, it's clean, and it's a solid version of it.
And I'm trying to say this without us looking like completely incompetent musicians.
Right.
And I can't. So I'm just going to say, the version that is out on Ascending Degrees, it was recorded against a click track. That doesn't mean we were quality performances on the recording to that click track. He still had to do so much.
Hold on.
So much.
They didn't do it right. I did it right.
He had to do so much cleanup on all 5 members to make it fit to current Contrøller and Austin standards.
We just had to sprinkle awesomeness on top of me.
Awesomness on top of me.
That's what I said. That's what I said. Awesomenness on top of me.
Yep.
To add to my awesomeness. That's what it was.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you mean that you were God with that take?
I stopped listening the moment you started talking. I'm sorry.
All right, so you're getting 2 completely remastered, rebuilt tracks on this EP,
especially part 1.
Yes.
Yeah, and you were getting 2 brand new,
previously unreleased tracks.
Visions 3 being the newest of it all, and there was a Visions remix that was done that we've been sitting on.
Well, Visions Part 2 remix.
Is it a Part 2 remix?
So Visions Part 2 remix. So Jeff and Bob back in 2014, well no, it would have been 2015, when we were going to do the expanded edition, there were plans to do 2 remixes for the release, which we did do. However, we were not positive that our buddy Nick was actually going to agree to doing a remix for us. And so as a backup, if he was unavailable, he wasn't wanting to, whatever reasonings, if he had just said no, we had part 2 ready to go onto the album. However, as you know, Nick said, cool, I'm on board, let's do this, which then made it to where we didn't need to do 2 of our own remixes, and Jeff, he put all the work in, so we ultimately were like, all right, which one do you want out? Do you want Void or do you want Visions 2? He's like, well, Visions 2, we can, that's a newer track and everything, so it's going to be less time removed from when we're putting it out, the original, to when the remix goes out. Little did he know it was going to be so long from when it came out. But he opted for Void to go on to the Ascending Degrees Expanded. That put Visions 2 remakes onto the back burner for this whole time. So that's been sitting there done since maybe about 8 months after Part 2 was done getting recorded.
It's like all this stuff that we've had just sitting on the back burner for this project.
Yeah.
The majority...
It's kind of our MO sometimes, depending.
Not really. That's what I was getting at earlier. Like, we don't really back burner.
Well, we have stuff in the works.
But it's always there's always stuff in the works, but it's always stuff that is, like, relevant to where we're at in our career, in our lives at that time.
I mean, once it's done, we'll put it out, and it's like, hey, cool, it's done. Yeah, let's get it out.
Yeah, we don't hold on. That's what I was saying. We don't hold on to the track that we wrote back from Undefined.
Oh, no.
We're like, it just didn't fit the album. Let me hold on to it.
If we don't hold a Tool
thing where they're still going back and listening to demo tapes from Undertow.
Like, if we were still holding on to something from Undefined, I'd be like, dude, it's dead. It's done.
That's what I'm getting at is, it doesn't reflect
it really doesn't.
Where we're at in any attribute in our lives right now. This is, and the only reason this one worked, in my opinion, differently was because we opted not to go re-record Part 1 and Part 2. It is the original recordings, it is the original emotion, it is the original, performance, albeit cleaned up, albeit, fixed and redefined, if you will, than what the originals were. It is still the original performance.
You mean it's not undefined?
No, it's been redefined.
It's been redefined.
It was undefined. It's been redefined. But yeah, we still have the same passion that was us at that time being reflected in the recordings, albeit a better interpretation of it. For Part 1 and Part 2, and even Part 2 remakes. And Part 3 is where we are all collectively at now. Yeah. And we're all collectively in a different spot also because we have Chris on Part 3. And as what you're hearing in Part 1 and Part 2 is the actual original recording. So those are all with Brandon.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this, when we're talking about this being a career-spanning release, it is not an understatement by any stretch of the means. It is not only the years have passed by and not only the experiences have passed by, it is also the lineup has passed by and everything like that with the changes that have happened within the camp. And all of that is reflected in this 4 tracks, which is like, that's, I think, the most mind-boggling part. Most people who have something that is kind of like this, it's like, well, listen to this greatest hits that's encompassing like 8, 10, 12 songs or something like that. We're doing this in the scope of 4 songs. on a release. Albeit it's like over 20 minutes worth of time.
Yeah.
But we're only doing it in 4 tracks. Like, let's, show off the world, 13 plus years of a band's existence in 20 minutes on a release that's taken over 10 years to put together.
And the growth. A lot of growth.
Yeah. I will say that part 3, in no way, shape, or form, our skill set would have been capable of writing when we wrote part 1.
No,
not part 1. Part 2, we wrote that maybe, but part 1 definitely.
No, we had the understanding of maybe what had happened in part 3, but trying to recreate something close to part 3 when we wrote part 1, not a chance.
Nope.
There would not have been a chance on that one. So
it is definitely a sign of growth for us. So that's hopefully something you guys can all appreciate.
And when you guys get this, stream it, whatever you do, sit back, close your eyes,
eat some Jell-O,
go on the journey that Visions is intended to be.
And I will say this, I did try, so it's all going to be contingent on your streaming platform and how you're actually listening to this, but I did actually blend all of the tracks slightly together with ending to beginning, so they all should roll from one directly into the next. So if you have a device that's playing friendly with it, and you actually just hit play on the EP, it should all present collectively as a singular, 20-plus minute track from part 1 through part 3. I did not do that, obviously, on the remakes, because that made no sense to do with the remakes, but...
Oh, shit.
Part 1 through part 3 is all technically blended in the mix together, to where the one will roll directly into the next. So you should have... What we're hoping is a very tranquil and emotional experience. Yeah, I mean, a roller coaster might be a fair assessment, because it's not like this is a singular tonality across all 3 tracks.
Well, and we would love to hear your thoughts on it. What
about their ideas?
And their visions.
But no, we'd love to hear from you guys on it. Whether it's a message on one of our threads on Facebook, we'll take
YouTube, something.
Yeah, YouTube. We would take a Facebook message to let us know. We'll happily give you the clout for the question, or the comment. But yeah, we would love to hear from you guys on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely feeling a certain way of closure. Yes. I don't know how else to describe the emotion other than a sense of closure with the fact that this is coming out on Friday. I'm curious how I'm actually going to feel.
I'm not going to lie. When you said closure, I went like Austin Powers-ish. It was like, closure. Closure.
I mean, yeah, but no, but yeah.
But yeah, no.
But I'm still sitting here genuinely curious come Saturday, once it's been out for 24 hours and everything, how I'm going to feel, because this...
Well, we have a show, so...
Well, yeah, I know that, but regardless of that, it is still one of those...
This has been, for me especially, has been a passion project.
Well, not only just a passion project, just the intention for so long of how many conversations have happened in so many different rehearsal spaces of when we get this done, when we finish this part.
And that's funny. So many rehearsal spaces, because it has traveled through the spaces of where we would...
It really has, hasn't it?
Yeah. It has traveled from front rooms to storage units. To storage units, to showcase rooms.
Yeah.
Front showcase rooms for fireplaces at 2 different buildings.
Yes.
To a bar stage. To my basement.
I forgot about the bar stage. Wow.
Yeah. To
that's where Believe was.
Yep. I was just actually talking about that in one of the new Track Story episodes coming up here. So y'all keep an eye for
Watch that.
But and then we had the back room as a rehearsal space for it. I mean, this has had so many different band members It has had so many different rooms that this has been conceived in and talked about in and considered in, that it's just, come Saturday, it's going to be, okay, this actually happened.
Fine. You know what the best part is going to be?
Huh.
Not hearing from you guys going, Chad.
If you would just freaking respond, it's not like this message hasn't been sitting there for like 4 freaking hours with an everybody tag on it. You know to respond.
Chad, when are you going to write Visions 3?
Yeah.
Chad, when are you going to write Visions 3? It's done, and I am happy.
Are you
That's
actually?
Okay.
And I guess
I'm going to get a lot of those messages here soon. So
I want to actually kind of wrap this all up with one huge, genuine question for Chad.
Uh-oh.
Given how much time has gone by, given how many iterations of everything was considered for Part 3, but also how little time was on Part 1 and kind of consideration was put into Part 2, but just all of the effort that's been put into Visions EP for so many years, are you happy with the end result, or would there be any attribute of any of the 3 tracks that you wish you could change?
No, I am just, from getting the studio samples and listening to everything in order from track 1, track 2 to track 3, and just let those 3 play on repeat over and over again when I've been at work and I've got an earbud in, and just like the journey that it has taken me, the trips back into memory lane of when writing, and to finally feel the epitome of the closure, and just like the ending was finally justly given to something that I started so many years ago.
I also have to ask one caveated follow-up. Did you genuinely think that we were ever going to get Part 3 done and out?
No. Because I drag my feet too much.
Well, at least you're honest.
Yeah. So, because I was curious about that, if it was because of that reasoning, if it was because of our drummer situation for so many years.
That did play some part in it. The constant shifting of drummers that we had for those few years.
17 to 20.
Yeah.
Well, 17 to 22.
Yeah. So for those few years was really rough on wanting to bring something so precious to me.
So personal.
Yeah. Until I knew I had the right drummer to play along with it. And then the pressure of, we are going to do this now because it needs to be done now.
Yeah.
That was like, okay, now it's time to fully focus.
Because, I mean, in all honesty, to add one stamp on all this, this was supposed to be like one of the first releases. Because this got recorded, for everybody that's curious, this got recorded in the same bundle as Find Yourself was recorded and From Ashes was recorded. We recorded everything in one foul swoop. This was supposed to be one of the earlier on releases because we were like, oh, this is going to be one of the easier ones. We already have 2 of the tracks done.
Yeah.
Let's just hurry up and get this one done so that way it's also closer to the actual 10-year mark. Mm-hmm. And then it kept not getting there, and then eventually it was like, all right, if it's not going to be able to be the first release, let's just plan that this is one that we push to the back burner. You take your time to mix it. We'll put that one out at the end of all of this.
Oh, which was a big part that ate at me because, like, once the studio stuff got done, I had not heard what was done vocally for that, and the
you did it because me and Jeff were in there with you the whole time.
The only thing that I knew vocally was from our pre-pros that we sent to the studio, and that was like incomplete vocals.
Well, yeah, and they were rough. They were so rough.
So
the pre-pros saved our ass on this entire recording session.
They did, but I'm been waiting ever since that recording session like a year ago or however.
No, it was over. Yeah, it was over.
Was it worth the wait, Chad?
Oh, it really was.
Okay.
For me, you kept a lot of the most important parts that I saw that I liked from the pre-pros. That beginning whisper was just like that was an moment when we were writing, and it was like
that was a fluke just in the writing moment.
Yeah, I was like, keep that. That needs to stay, and I'm happy to see that it did. And you'll see what I'm talking about soon.
Yeah, so. Days from now. But yeah, so one question to you, Bob.
Uh-oh.
So, and I'm gonna spill a little bit of tea on this one.
Okay.
Part 3 was probably one of the biggest fights to get you over the finish line on in the studio. Do you have anything, listening back on it now, that so much time has been removed, that you wish you had done differently, added, subtracted, just performed differently? Or are you happy with the end result?
I'm happy with the end result. I mean, I think we're always our own worst critic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's some things that...
That's why it took so long.
Yeah,
fair. There's some things I probably would have done a little bit different, but for the most part, actually, no, like completely. I'm satisfied with what we've done.
Good.
I mean, I might have, hey, I probably could have gone a higher octave here, or maybe I should have gone this area right here a little more gruff.
Right.
But no, the message is there, and I'm satisfied with it.
Fair enough. I was just curious because you were the last one in on this one.
Oh yeah.
You had your stuff, then half of it got rewritten.
Yes. Oh, I was so mad.
And then we went back in.
I was so mad.
And
I was so mad.
But
so mad if I didn't say it.
Were you seething?
I was.
Nobody has ever seethed the way that a Chad has seethed.
Oh no! I went to the punching bag. Yeah, I was pissed.
But
more at myself than anything.
I was going to say, but in hindsight, looking back at the recording, do you feel that though you may have been pissed in the moment?
Oh, the fight was worth it because it turned out to.
It's everything I
was.
It to be.
I was ready in my mindset for what I wanted to do, but vocally, I was just not.
You hadn't performatively prepped yourself for it.
I wasn't comfortable enough with it.
Yeah.
Going into the recording booth to be like, okay, this is where I need to hit this. This is where. So I mean, if anything, if there's a lesson to anybody who like any singer that's starting out, okay. You have to practice. You have to warm up. You have to get comfortable. Feeling is everything.
Get into an empty room in your house and actually sing it out.
Like scream it out if you have to. Like the best place to sing, I kid you not, I sing in the shower. You guys can laugh at
the bathrooms.
The bathrooms are the best acoustics. And that's what it was. I went in there like I half-assed it when I went in there the first time. And thinking, oh, I've got this. This is nothing. My ego on my shoulder. Like, oh, I've got this. I've got the lyrics here. Even if I'm not, I can figure it out. I've got this. And I didn't figure it out. And ended up having, it was a 2-day process, 3-day process?
It was like a 3-4 day process total for the whole thing.
Woo!
Because,
it was a
6-minute song.
Well, beyond that also, because I'm not also saying it was only your main track. I mean, we got
layerings and then backing vocals I did and stuff. So I mean, it was a process, but yeah, it was mostly the first day was completely my fault because I wasn't ready. If I would have went in there more ready, or even if I wasn't ready, I was like, hey, look, we need to reschedule. I'm just not ready.
You would if you would have just owned the moment, type thing for what it was.
But I didn't want to reschedule. I wanted to get this done. I wanted to get it if nothing else, we could start where we're at and we can get things. No, I should have just taken the day. And just what it is what it is. But now that fight got us where we're at.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was curious. Is I know because I was there and I was part of it firsthand and everything of the fight and everything.
Oh, yeah.
That this much time removed, do you feel like it was worth the fight that we were in for the end product?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that was more the question of was it a no, I should have stuck to my guns and screw y'all. That was not the fight that I should have backed down from, and this would have been a better version type thing. But yeah, I mean, like I'll completely bend and bow that like I knew that this project was a Chad-centric project and everything. So when he had certain notes he was trying to strive for, short of a, dude, that's like a half step off, so just change that one. No, because it's out of key. Out of those like specific like nuanced things, but if he was in a certain key, he was going for a certain thing. I knew for this specific project, other songs I'll do a back and forth with you and everything on. This one is all right, I need to try to find wherever he's at.
Yeah, where are you living at? You actually had to sit down and learn my bass line, didn't you?
No.
Yeah, I completely, by ear, learned your bass line off of recording, so that way I could learn your bass line, transpose that over to guitar, and actually be able to write against that bass riff on guitar then.
Now, in a slight defense to me fighting, like we bicker all the time. We just different things. But to hear Putt look at me and say, "Yeah, Bob, this isn't working today."
Oh no, you were like.
I was mad. I was so pissed. But yeah, when Putt looks at me, it's like, yeah, Bob,
we're calling it for the day.
We're calling it for the day. I was mad. Well, you guys, no, Bob, are you sure you've got this? Yeah, I've got this. I've got this. I wasn't going to argue with you guys. Putt, he looked at me and, yeah, that was just it. So.
Yeah, but yeah, with me, it was a...
Did you struggle at all with this?
I did, and that's the reason, that's why I was saying, like, I had to learn his bass riff. I grabbed his bass here in my basement, listened back on the recording, figured out the bass part, taught myself the bass part by ear so that way I could transpose over to the guitar what key he was in and all of that, and then had to do a very odd tuning for my guitar, which odd tuning isn't here nor there on it. It's the fact that my tension on my strings was not conducive to that tuning. So that's what made it a problem. And the fact that he wrote it against his normal tuning that he has on his bass, which, Chad, why don't you elaborate for everybody what your tuning is?
It's weird.
Why don't you elaborate?
That's good enough. It's weird. I run a 5-string bass. One string is set to drop C. One is to drop B flat. And then I have 3 strings that are tuned to standard bass tuning. Yeah. I don't... Hey, it's brought everything that I've needed out of it.
Yep, see? Hey, crush the haters. You got this.
No, seriously, it's like, I'm not doing the standard drop C tuning. Are you crazy? I'm gonna do my own thing. This is Chad's bass.
No, and I agree with you. And in Chad's defense, that was mostly because he was trying to figure out a way to work with all of our different tunings that we run in without having to constantly tune and everything. I mean, that was honestly the main reason why I was able to convince you to move over to a 5-string from a 4. It's just so that way you had another string that was staying in a permanent tuning. You're like, okay, then I don't have to necessarily always play in a 5-string, but I have that 5th string already always tuned to that lower tuning for myself.
Which is done good because I've done those C to B flat drops, and it's like not have to worry about different things, and
it makes it easier for the writing. But I will say that to elaborate a little bit for me, it was I had to, for everybody who's curious, I had to do a standard tuning, but instead of a drop D, I had to do a drop C with standard tuning for the rest of my guitar, which, for anybody who's a guitarist out there, knows that trying to get the tension to play friendly with all of your strings between standard on 5 strings on your neck and one that is that much looser for your low end makes it a lot more challenging for setup and for tuning stability and everything. Oh, yeah. So when I got to the studio, it was very much I looked at Putt and I'm like, I don't know how many takes I'm going to have to do with this, but there's a good chance I'm going to have to do a lot of takes, not because I'm not confident in my parts, But I don't know how well this is going to stay in tune while we're actually tracking this the whole time. He's like, all right, fair enough. And sure enough, it was like a good hour-long process, not because I was screwing up takes, but it was like, all right, let's retune. All right, let's retune. All right, let's retune.
So anybody out there that ever wants to try to cover Visions 3...
It is a beast in itself, and you're not going to be able to use pretty much any, short of if you actually use a Line 6 Variax, to where you can go in and you can program each individual string's tuning through your system. That's the only way you're going to be able to pull this off easily. Yeah. And I don't even know how many people still run a Variax. So,
I do. All the time.
All the time?
All the
Yeah.
time.
But, yeah, the song was definitely challenging in a multitude of aspects. I am glad it's done. Mm-hmm. I am remorseful it's done.
Yeah.
But I'm remorseful only in the fact that, like I told Jeff the other day, I feel like that there's no other way to like truly convey this other than using the verbiage of this release fully closes a chapter on an era of Contrøller.
Mm-hmm. It does.
There is no other way to truly like categorize it other than that this is the final piece of the era of
the final countdown.
We're in that. We have 5 days left. So, but yeah, it's the true conclusion of an era of Contrøller.
Yeah.
It might not be the end of Contrøller, but it is definitely the end of an era. So
it's been a process.
It has, and
but you have to trust in it.
You do.
Kind of trust in it.
I hope that we've conveyed the uniqueness of this release
of the Visions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the struggle,
the heart,
and
the total void we went through.
Yeah.
I'm done with the puns.
I'm
sorry, it was getting old.
He was dad joking it up over here. So it's just I don't know how much more I can try to stress and convey how deeply passionate of a release this specific release is, more than many other, because not to like diminish any of our other releases, because a lot of them have had their own like personal attachments and some aspect of themselves and everything. This has a very unique attachment in a whole different way than any of our other releases have. So, if you can feel at least 10% of that come across when you're listening to this, then mission accomplished.
With me, they can only feel 2%.
Yeah, I know. But but yeah, it is a deeply personal release. It is a cathartic, strenuous, challenging, happy, painful, exuberant release.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Potential hashtag retake.
No, we're keeping that in. I'm going to show the world how much of an a-hole you are.
I'm just happy with the conclusion of where this is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the amount of work that has gone in.
Yeah, it's relieving to have it done. I think that's the big thing, because it's been just kind of hovering over us for a minute.
I think that's the biggest. I think had we released it 2 years ago, I don't think we'd have the level of attachment.
Now what I want is like your big Contrøller flag up there. I want the keyhole.
I can set that up.
Done in the flag.
I can set that up. You want a keyhole flag?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, here on the merch store soon, I will be making a Visions flag for everybody if you're interested.
Yes, get onto our link tree is one way to get to our merch store.
Yep. You got windbreakers, coats, t-shirts, flags.
We got different cups, just like all kinds of good merch there for those that can't make it to a show or want something that we don't offer at the show.
Yep. hats. We have all of our embroidered hats. In fact, the one I'm wearing right now is one of them. So if you're on Patreon, you see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So,
what? Patreon?
Plug. I don't think anybody's listening by this point in time. We're about an hour into this episode.
Oh, gosh.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
So, yeah, hopefully you actually did, just so that way you can hear the entire history and backstory of what has gone into this release. So, on that note, we are going to be doing another review episode coming up next. I got a message from our boys in Iron Oxide that they got a brand new release coming out here in a few days. So we're not going to hit it right at release day, but it's not going to be long after. So be sure to look out for that, and we'll have a couple other surprises for that review episode. So on that note, I got to get to editing because we're shooting this literally hours before this comes out. So
sweet.
Later, everyone.
Faces.
Thank you for listening to Actually Controller. If you liked what you heard, please consider following us on all our socials. You can easily find us on all the different platforms by going to linktree/controller33 or scan the QR code if you're watching the video version of this episode. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time.